I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Dave. He said if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, it'd be awesome if you just go ahead and knock that out. Let's get into it. Couple of notable headlines. I guess more than a couple of notable headlines on this Tuesday morning. It's been busy. Milos Uzan has announced he will withdraw from the 2025 NBA draft and return to the University of Houston. And Pop Isaacs has decommitted from Houston and agreed to a deal at Texas A&M. Those are the two big ones, I think. Norlander, first, happy belated birthday. 29 looks great on you. I hope it was a good one. And can you tell us how closely these developments from Tuesday morning are connected?
Thanks for the note. Yeah, 29 looking good. I'll take it every single time. No, it was a good little weekend there. These are directly correlated, although it is interesting in this regard. So I was talking to one of my younger brothers this morning, and we were talking about some other stuff here. Got a youngest bro who's getting married later this year, so we were just going over some bachelor party stuff. But as we were talking about a lot of that stuff, I told him I was prepping for the podcast and all that. He follows college hoops, but he's not at this off season. He's not going day to day on or anything like that. But he asked a very it's sometimes funny, like he asked a very basic question, which I might not have thought about otherwise. But he goes, why did Pop Isaacs transfer? Like, why did he leave? Because his question was this. He's like, why would you? He's like, I know he probably got a lot more money, but like, why would you leave on a likely Final Four national championship contender to go play Texas A&M where he has no shot at winning the national title? Like, why would you do that? Like, he was going to be on a roster that was going to be on a relevant top 5 team. And it is a good big picture, obvious question, but these are directly correlated. And the answer obviously is not just money, but it was also role. But it is interesting. And Pop Isaacs is free to do whatever the hell he wants. Like, he could wind up going to Texas A&M and turning into a first-team All-American and boosting his NBA stock in a year from now, even if the Aggies have no shot at winning a national championship or making a Final Four run. Maybe personally for him, this will wind up being the best thing possible. But it is interesting in a vacuum, GP, to just look at what happened here. Milos Uzan decided to come back to Houston, and we can get to that in just a second. But the pure nature of that, and this was told to me 2.5-3 weeks ago, where if Uzan was going to come back, it would probably force the issue with Isaacs, and it would be unlikely for both of them to remain on the roster together. Lo and behold, that did wind up being the case there. But I don't know. It is an interesting way of looking at it, and at least I was interested by it. You give up playing for Kelvin Sampson for what's been statistically the best program over the past 4 or 5 years in terms of metrics, rankings, KenPom, and all that kind of stuff. UConn's got the 2 championships, but Houston's been most consistently at the top, and yet Isaacs is gonna bypass that. I don't know I know it doesn't bother you in the slightest, but what about it from that angle though? Just he committed to Houston, and by nature of someone else's decision decides, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm going to stay in state, jump conferences, and head over to the SEC.
All of this stuff is still so new that I think it's tough for a lot of us to wrap our heads around it and make sense of it. But when you just start comparing it and contrasting it to other professional sports, and that's what this is now, more or less, this is like the type of thing that happens all the time. Like MLB free agents will leave World Series contenders to go to lesser teams for more money and a bigger role. It happens in the NBA. It happens in the NFL. And I'm not surprised that it's happening in college basketball. It's happening in college football. This is sports when you start allowing movement and putting what amounts to huge contracts on the table, then you're going to see people making decisions for reasons other than where is the best place I could win a national championship. We'll get to another example of this, later on as it pertains to PJ Haggerty. He clearly didn't pick a place where he could best compete for a national title in his 4th year of college basketball. So this is just it's all new and unusual, but I do think largely it's not going to be that uncommon going forward. We're going to see decisions like this pretty regularly. I would assume.
Agreed. Yeah, and we get that a lot across sports. But this one was interesting just in the regard of Isaac's. Clearly, if he had stayed on the roster, was going to be part. Like I would even argue, like not knowing how much he was set to make at Houston versus how much he's set to make at Texas A&M, and we can even get to a little more A&M here before we get to the break. But if he had stayed on the roster, I think Houston would have been a near universal preseason #1 team by having both of those players, in addition to keeping JoJo Tugler, Emmanuel Sharp. They've got a great freshman class coming in. And instead, he said, nope, I'm going to go do what's best for me. All more power to him. And if anything, it makes A&M even more interesting. And broadly speaking, that's intriguing on its own. Let's talk Uzan, though. He wanted to stay in the NBA. Here's what I understand with everything with Uzan. Was pretty determined in wanting to stay in the NBA draft, as obviously most players are that declare for the draft. But there is this space where there are guys who declare, and they do have this area where it's, okay, I could come back, be a really important, really, really good college player, make plenty of money, or I can go to the NBA draft and maybe I could get picked anywhere between, say, 30 and 45 or so to speak. What I was told a month ago at this point was Uzan was dead set determined to stay in the draft if he could get assurances that he could go in the top 40. That didn't happen. His combine was spotty. And from what I understand, he also had, proper guidance in this regard. He stands to, I would, this is an estimation. I don't have this sourced here. I would estimate that Milos Uzan, by coming back to college, can stand to make north of $3 million at least next season. And to be the starting lead guard on a national championship contender, on a team that just went to the title game, and make a lot of money and potentially, find yourself in the same spot, if not a little bit better next season. Uzan might have made the decision harder on himself than it needed to be, but this is obviously a boon. He was expected to stay in the draft because of what was, just discussed to be out there. Like, he wanted to stay in. Kind of like RJ Lewis is another one of these players who wants to be out of college. He wants to go pursue his NBA dream. Whether or not that is going to happen, we'll see as we do this. Oh, by the way, the draft deadline for college players is tomorrow, Wednesday night at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So we've got a few names here of guys that still need to decide between now and then. Most notably, Tahad Pettiford. We're still waiting on that. He wants a first-round guarantee, and if he does get that, he's gone. If not, a decent chance he can come back to Auburn, but we wait and see on that. Yaxel Lendenborg sounds like he's coming back to Michigan, but we wait on official word there. RJ Lewis, I have no idea. Jameer Watkins feels 50-50. I think Alex Condon winds back up at Florida. Otega Oweh has apparently gotten some really, really good feedback in the past 4 or 5 days. I previously thought that he was almost a guarantee to come back to Kentucky. I would still pick that he comes back to Kentucky, but apparently what he's gotten back recently has been good on that end, so we wait and see on that. Adu Thero leaning towards being gone, but we wait on official word there. I think if he came back to Arkansas, that would be massive, and I think that runs the gamut of notable players. For Uzan and Houston, this to me firms up the Cougars' preseason top 3 status. I think you've got him #1. Plenty of people would. You get that, Sharp, Tugler, that's big time. Last season, Uzan averaged 11.4 points, 4.2 assists. He was a 43% shooter from three-point range. Those numbers should all improve. Three-point shooting, maybe asking him to get better than 40% might be asking a bit too much. But yeah, that's big time, because there's guys that most people listening to this pod aren't too aware of, but Chris Senac, Isaiah Harwell, these guys are going to step in and be immediately impactful players. Samson's got a real squad here, and this is a good boost. A month ago, I don't think that Houston staff was banking on Uzan returning, ready and prepared for it if necessary. And lo and behold, the feedback wasn't quite what they wanted. Uzan will make himself a nice little bag here starting next season, and Houston will be a bona fide national title contender yet again.
I have always had Uzan projected back to Houston since version 1 of the top 25 and 1. So this is a big headline, but it's not a surprising one. It's a little bit like the Carter Knox headline from Memorial Day weekend. Like, I saw a couple of tweets and it's like, big news. And I'm like, I guess, but like, I never assumed anything other than this.
Then he'd be back at just so he's back at Arkansas if you're just checking in.
Of course. So with Uzan, I always had him on this roster. And if I've got the order correct in my head, if I remember it right, I had Houston #1 in version 1 of the top 25 and 1 with an expected backcourt of Milos Uzan, Terrence Arsenault, and Emmanuel Sharp. Then they add the commitment of Pop Isaacs, and it's like, okay, if you're #1 without Pop Isaacs, you're going to be #1 with Pop Isaacs. But and we talked about this on the pod, it sure seems like one of these guards is going to get out of there, whether it's Uzan or Arsenault. These 4 guards are not going to start the season on Houston's roster.
Mm-hmm.
Who's out? Then Arsenault announces he's in the transfer portal. Okay, that solves that part of that. So now you've got a projected backcourt of Uzan, Isaacs, and Sharp. Buddy, that's still number 1. That's where we'd been setting up until this morning. Now Papa Isaacs goes to Texas A&M. Who slides in there? Is that a Mercy Miller thing? But suddenly I do think I have to at least take a real look at whether to keep Houston at number 1. And if I move them, I believe it would be the first time I've moved them from number 1 all off season. Okay. But that's a clear down. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Push back if you want. That's a obvious downgrade in roster to lose Pop Isaacs and Terrence Arsenault from what was at least at one point this offseason a projected roster.
In that kind of framing, yes. Now, again, you had Uzan always coming back, which wound up being true. Houston staff, I think, was prepped for that not to be the case, and now here it is. It is the case. If you want to adjust, you can. It won't surprise me if Houston winds up as the best team, or frankly, they've been number 2 at Ken Palma 4 years running here. Right. So maybe, you know what, GP, just slot him in at number 2 and just set it and forget it, and there you go on all that.
It's easy to leave them at number 1 because all you got to do is just stand up and say, "Oh yeah, I'm an idiot. I believe in Kelvin Sampson in Houston." Oh yeah. Sure, I guess that makes me dumb. You just stand on. It's Kelvin Sampson in Houston. Relax. Yes. They're always great. They'll be great again. So it's easy to do, but if I do adjust to stay intellectually consistent, it would require me to move St. John's to number 1 because I have St. John's number 2 right now. That's what it would require me to do, to move St. John's to number 1. If I were to do anything other than that without more roster movement around notable teams today, I would be manipulating my own rankings for reasons that I'm not comfortable with. So whether I'm right or wrong, I've got to be consistent. And if I drop Houston, St. John's has to be number 1. How would you handle that? St. John's or Houston number 1 right now?
Maybe give it 12 hours, see what happens here in game 4 of the Knicks Pacers series. Knicks fans might need the boost. They might need the boost. They were able to rally and salvage going down 3-0. But if Indiana gets it done tonight, the Knicks fans who double as Johnny's fans, they might need the morale boost there. I would, between those two right now, me here last week of May, I would lean Houston. I would, but I get what you're saying on that.
If we just drafted players, if I threw every Houston player and every St. John's player into a draft and we picked teams, who would have the most players picked first?
I don't know, man. Like, Uzan's got a chance to follow in the mold here of what's happened with the Cougars over the past 5-6 seasons. Like, when to your general question there, like, you might not think you would take Uzan first, second, maybe not third, but LJ Cryer, All-American level guard. Prior to that, we had Sasser, right? What he was able to do. We also had Jamal Shed. Like, Uzan, to me, fits specifically because of his defensive capabilities. He fits in that mold. Like, he should, if he plays to what he's capable of, and Houston's going to be that good, you know, second team, third team All-American, maybe even first team All-American, but he should be that kind of player. I understand what you're asking.
Let me be clear.
Jojo Tugler might be the best defender in the sport next season. So I'm just kind of talking through as you lay it out for me. I would lean Houston, but don't let me stop you.
No, I mean, maybe. I'm not even arguing. I'm just sort of wondering out loud. And my questions wouldn't be about Uzan. I think he has been great and will be great. It's just when you start going through that roster, I think you hit some spots where you've got some question marks with the Houston roster in terms of just talent. That maybe I think St. John's roster is more talented than Houston's roster. But obviously, you could probably say that about a bunch of rosters relative to Houston's rosters in recent years, and it ultimately doesn't matter because there's a culture in place, a program that's running at an extremely high level. Kelvin's fingerprints are all over it, and literally every year they lose an All-American guard, they just replace them with another All-American guard.
Yeah, and but you know what? You say that with talent. Now, this is going to be youth. Don't get me wrong, but Houston's got the second-ranked class coming in the sport next season. I mentioned Cenac. He's a rangy 6'10" power forward. Isaiah Harwell's a 6'6" wing, ranked 16th in the class. Cenac's 7th overall. Kingston Flemings is the 20th ranked player in the class. He's 6'3", off the bench guard, you would think. And then they've got a player named Bryce Jackson who'll probably be fighting for minutes overall. But they've got a really, they've probably got their most loaded freshman class ever, in addition to the returning pieces that they have there. Ton to be said for that. A good day for Houston, unquestionably. And I'm most interested, not to get too into what they'll be overall from a gameplay perspective, but this Houston team last season that made it to the final game, fell by 2 to Florida, the national title game. Best 3-point shooting team that Sampson's had. Can they be close to that again next season? And if they can, and they've got the returning pieces, and that talent's going to be good at the freshman level, quite clearly they will be in the conversation. And honestly, we'll probably get to points where they'll occupy the number 1 ranking in the AP Top 25.
Everything you just said is true. I would point out that heralded freshman class has never been less important than it is right now.
I know, but I'm fascinated to see what Kelvin Sampson does with a heralded freshman class. It might it really might get what you're getting at, GP. It might be even more reinforced, although Cenac's going to get a ton of run. There's no barring knock on wood injury. He's going to get plenty of play and should be an impactful player and a one and done kind of guy. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, this is not to get off track, but of course we're going to get off track. This is something that I don't even reference. I don't think I reference recruiting classes rankings too much anymore because I don't think they're done the right way. Like saying this is the best recruiting class in the country based on nothing but what high school graduates are coming in just isn't. That's not true. That's not the best. Who has the best recruiting class in the country right now according to the recruiting rankings?
I'm gonna check it right now. Hold on, let me see it. Houston's number 2, Duke.
Duke, right?
Duke. So it's Duke, Houston, Arizona, UConn, Notre Dame is 5th. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you ready for this? What that suggests is that Duke has the best recruiting class in the country. Do you believe that? Do you think Duke's got the best incoming players in the country?
Yes, I do.
You do?
The best freshman players.
But that's not what this means anymore.
Okay.
That doesn't.
I got you. Okay.
Your recruiting class is not just
recruiting
freshmen.
Is now everything. I got you. Okay.
And so when people say Duke has the best
recruiting, change the terminology. I got it.
Yes, you should. Yes, we should, as a company, change the terminology. Not to go above my pay grade, but it doesn't make any sense anymore to say Duke's got the best recruiting class in the country. No, they don't. They have the top-ranked freshman class in the country, but it's not the best recruiting class in the country. St. John's might have the best recruiting class in the country.
Well, it really might be Duke though. The Boozers, they just. Oh, by the way, Duke updates here since we last podcast. It's Sebastian Wilkins, 4-star top 50 player committed, and then Dame Sarr, who we told you a week and a half ago. Dame Sarr, who's now this 6'7" super athletic wing from Italy. He's also part of the recruiting class. So, but I'm just devil's advocate, GP. Duke truly might wind up with the best recruiting class by the end of it. That's all.
That's fine. My larger point is that when people say the program with the best incoming freshmen has the, quote, best recruiting class, that is not true. And I have stopped saying it or even acknowledging it. And I look forward to the day where everybody else does the same. St. John's or Houston, one of them will be number 1 in the top 25 and one later today. I'll figure it out.
Before we break real quick, I feel like you're going to a break. So Pop Isaacs is going to go to Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. He started his career at Texas Tech, good player. He only played 8 games a year ago because of a hip issue with Creighton. So now he goes there. And then minutes before we went live, Mackenzie Mbako, who I was not even aware had withdrawn from the draft, but he is withdrawn from the draft. He is also going to play for Bucky McMillan at Texas A&M. That's a nice little boost. So A&M also gets Rylan Griffin from Kansas, a couple of lesser known players, Jakari Lane, who was like a 17-point a game guy at North Alabama. No one knows who he is. I understand all that, but we'll see if he can be an up transfer of positive impact. Marcus Hill, who was a decent player at NC State, Duke Miles via Oklahoma, and then Federico, who was at Texas Tech, comes over there. McMillan might actually have a team when you add Mbako and Isaac, he really might have a team that can be impactful in the SEC. So Uzan returning to Houston is the biggest headline of today. And then we're going to get to Haggerty in just a second, but maybe not so quietly. McMillan has done himself well here. And I don't know the story just yet, but I'd be interested to see how he positioned his program to be the plan B for Isaac's. Because these were practically simultaneous. Right. He announces he signed with A&M. He did it, I guess, early Tuesday or late Monday. And Uzan out of the draft, returning to Houston, and lo and behold, the Aggies with a new coach, no less. Like not a proven thing yet. He gets two notable players to commit to him. We'll see if it works out, but that's good stuff there. I wouldn't think GP is going to have A&M in his top 25-1. I wouldn't necessarily go that far either, but I do think that when you add those two pieces, it's obviously conceivable that if McMillan hits and he uses a system and it works out well, that they could work their way into being a ranked team at some point next season. So some good days for the hoops program. I'm sure they don't much care about it down there in College Station in May when they're trying to gear up for football season, which is a 365-day-a-year thing in that part of the country. But that's good gets for Bucky, and to me it makes an intriguing hire all the more interesting to see what they can do with that personnel next season.
I think what we're finding out over the past couple of years, at least, and perhaps it goes back further than that, but certainly over the past couple of years, is that when this is the recipe that led to your new place, your boosters are motivated to set the new guy up to win. In other words, Texas A&M didn't fire its coach because they hated him. He left them. He was just like, I want to go be somewhere else. Yeah. And when you get left like that, whether it's Maryland getting left or A&M getting left, when you get left, your boosters are like, we'll show this guy that he should have never left. And the best way you can show, quote, this guy, he should have never left, or the grass ain't always greener, or all of these stupid things people say, is to set your next guy up to win. And I'm assuming Bucky is just flushed with money, right?
Because that university in general, like especially on the football side, it's apparently, we can keep this podcast moving, but it's apparently outrageous just how much many rich people are willing to give that much money to it. I think there's not a greater discrepancy between money invested and lack of results. And I know A&M as a football program has gotten some, but they have not fulfilled. They have not fulfilled the promises and hopes and dreams of putting that much money in. So maybe it's trickling over to the basketball side. Maybe they can get a better bargain for their buck there on the hardwood.
It hadn't worked in football to the degree that it should, but buddy, it ain't because they ain't trying. It's not because they're not throwing all the money at it.
Did you see that chart that got shared? I think it was last week. Now, a lot of this was the buyout for Jimbo Fisher, but it had SEC it might have been athletic department spending.
Oh, it's crazy.
Did you see the chart though? Like A&M is more than. First of all, I think Bama was like 9th on the list, which was crazy, and I don't remember what 2 was. If it was Tennessee or someone else, A&M was more than double every other school in the SEC in football. Right. Absolutely crazy.
No, it's so like. There's a lesson in there, and I'm not saying it's a lesson everybody should follow. I'm just saying there's some evidence that what I'm about to say is true. If you want to rally your boosters monetarily, fire your coach or get a new coach. Just have a new coach. There is nothing that will rally people with their I was going to say checkbooks, but you know what I mean. I don't even know if people use checkbooks anymore, but you know what I mean.
I still use my checks every so often. I do. Yeah. When's the last time you wrote a check?
Okay, you ready for this? Yeah. I had a heating and air guy, and he came over to do whatever he had to do, and I was like, okay, how much do I owe you? And he put a number on it, and I was like, cool, you just take a Venmo? And he was like, no. And I was like, first I was like, credit card, and I was like, but is it better for you with cash? You know, we're trying to work around everything. Yeah. Like, is there something I could do?
We got an awesome painter guy.
Yeah, you know how it works.
I know the whole deal. Yes.
Okay, so I was like, hey, you got Venmo? He was like, no. He's like, what about like Cash App? He was like, no. I said, what about PayPal? He was like, no. Like he had nothing. I don't even know he has a phone. Okay.
How'd you get into your house?
I don't know. I don't even know how he found my house.
Okay.
I said, bro, it's 2025. And he said, I just take a cash or check. And I was like, well, I don't have either of those things. Like I have like I could maybe go to my kids' room and look through a piggy bank and see how much money's in there, but I don't have cash. And I was like, let me go look for a check. Couldn't find a check. I reordered checks from the bank just so that I could have a check to give my heat and air guy. It was a whole process.
You know what?
But
and you know this is true.
Mm.
You could live for another 50 years, and I certainly hope you will. Those checks are outlasting you. You're not writing enough checks.
I'll never get to the last check. You could bury me with that checkbook.
Slip it right
in fact, bury me with my checkbook. That's what I want. I want to be buried with my checkbook. I want me and my mic and my checkbook. That's the last time I wrote a check, and it will probably go down in history as the last time I ever write a check.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say I want to know. I'm gonna say by the end of 26, there's something else surfaces. You write a check for a second.
I am being slightly facetious.
I have to write checks. We can move this podcast along. No one cares about this. The reason why I write checks is when I pay taxes, when I go to town hall. Okay. So that's when I do. That's when I write checks.
Okay. I don't even do I somehow pay that online. I pay my taxes online. Yeah. Where I do, like, I have a fee that I have to pay every month. An agent fee. And I have to write a check for that.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
And so there was no good way to say that without
yearly. That's every month?
Oh, buddy, it's every month. It's every month. But nothing is a better value in this whole world than great representation. That's what I learned. That's what I learned. That's what I learned. So, but those
that is a great segue because PJ Haggerty, he could take some lessons for you. So let me just take this.
Haggerty, PJ needs to text me, and I need to get him representation because it's possible he screwed this up.
PJ Haggerty, over a Memorial Day weekend, he did commit to a surprising landing spot in Kansas State. GP's got some representation lessons and some what to knows about having an agent to pass along to Haggerty. We will get to that, but first, let's get a word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
The news became official on Memorial Day. PJ Haggerty, a census All-American for the University of Memphis Tigers, has announced a commitment to Kansas State University. Reportedly, it's in the neighborhood, the NIL deal, around $2.5 million. Mm-hmm. This comes after earlier in the offseason, he was reportedly offered by Memphis to stay in Penny Hardaway's program, roughly $3 million. So if you believe all the reporting, and I have no reason not to, if you believe all the reporting, PJ Haggerty rejected a roughly $3 million deal from Memphis to take a roughly $2.5 million deal from Kansas State. What do you make of that?
Well, hold on. I'm firing it right back at you. Let's do a little, as we record this Tuesday morning pod, GP is in his Grind City Media studio. This will obviously be a segment that you are talking about on your show here in about a half an hour. What do you make of the fact, and we can get into the fit and why I pick Kansas State because that is interesting to me, but what do you make of the fact that Haggerty is a somewhat rare instance in the NIL 4 or 5 year era that we've had here of a player taking less money and being, an all-American level type of talent, which Haggerty technically was this past season. He was an all-American, and yet and I was told less than 3. So yeah, 2.5, whatever we want to call it. Took less money to go somewhere else. To me, that's surprising. What do you think?
I don't think he intended to take less money. I don't think he ever thought he was going to have to take less money.
Right. But so why do you think that it wasn't Memphis again, double back around the bend? If you thought that, do we think that the 3 wasn't still there? Do we think that Penny truly moved on? I'm just.
Oh yeah, sure. I
want to know your thought on it.
According to the Memphis beat writers, and there's 2 like daily Memphis beat writers, who cover the team full time. That's their job. According to their reporting, Memphis pulled the offer. Memphis moved on. Memphis just said, or at least massively decreased the offer rather. So they either pulled it or massively decreased it. But the idea that on Monday, PJ Haggerty had a $3 million offer from Memphis and a 2-point whatever offer from Kansas State and decided to take less from Kansas State instead of more from Memphis. According to the beat writers in Memphis, that is not what actually happened.
Why do we think Penny Hardaway, if indeed the offer was reduced, pulled, whatever, Memphis isn't better for this? Why do we think we landed at this point?
Well, I don't want to have revisionist history. I thought it was smart for Memphis to move on at some point. Not necessarily shut the door and lock it. Like, not the way you explain John Calipari does it at Arkansas. Like, if you want to go in the transfer portal, that's fine. We wish you luck, but there's no coming back from that. We're locking the door behind you. I never suggested Penny should do that, and I don't think Penny did that. But what I did say is I would apply some pressure to PJ Haggerty, and I would tell him, we have $3 million to give you right now. This is what I would have said a month ago. We have $3 million to give you right now, and you can take it right now. But if you don't take it today, we're waking up tomorrow and we're going shopping with it like it's a Visa gift card with an expiration date. I'm going to offer this money to somebody else, and if I can get other people to take it, then we're going to give it away. And whatever's left from that $3 million, if you want it at some point, we'll give you whatever's left. But if we sign one dude for 1.5, then it's just been cut in half. And that's the way I would have done this, because otherwise it was just always going to end with him shopping himself to the highest bidder. And eventually somebody loses a player that they didn't think they were going to lose to the draft. A guy in the draft, but you assume he's going to withdraw, but then he doesn't withdraw. So all that money you had tied up in him, well, then you just lost a player. You've got this money free. I guess we'll go get us a PJ Haggerty. And then boom, you just dump it on top of him and he leaves Memphis anyway. So I thought for a while this is the likely outcome. And I don't think Penny mishandled this, although you are right. Memphis is not as good without PJ Haggerty as it would be with PJ Haggerty.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, they lose Tyrese Hunter as well. Tigers will be interesting next season. We'll save that for another show here.
To me, the other thing that's notable here, and this would be the thing that would concern me if I were Memphis, not just that I lost a player. It's that there have been 7 consensus All-Americans in the Memphis basketball program in history, like that were considered consensus All-Americans by the way the NCAA defines that. 7.
Okay.
PJ Haggerty is one of them, and literally none before PJ Haggerty had ever transferred out of the program.
Yeah. And that's climate. Like, we understand that.
Some of that's sign of the times. Yes. But every other consensus All-American who has ever put on that uniform has either finished his career at Memphis or entered the NBA draft early and left college. But they've never transferred to another place. This is a situation where it became pretty obvious pretty early PJ Haggerty didn't want to be at Memphis anymore. I mean, it's not like this isn't one of those deals where we just can't afford him. They offered $3 million reportedly. They had the money, and he just decided he didn't want to be there. And that is like a real thing that made people blink in Memphis. Like, what? What are you chasing? But it's not something anybody would blink at if it happened to literally any other American Athletic Conference program.
Right.
And to me, as a Memphis graduate, that's what concerns me. Memphis basketball is not what it once was in terms of its place in the sport and even its place in the city. They don't draw like they used to. They had a top 25 team all season last season, led by an All-American guard, coached by the most beloved graduate in the history of the school. And people didn't come to the games. People are bored with this league and playing. Yeah,
the league is a major. Like, we're veering far afield here, but more than anything, it's the league. I think some of this is also from my remove post not being in your city GP. Just kind of one thing after another with the program, and I think that can have impact on fan interest. It's just like, this thing and this thing. It's always something with Memphis, but I think by far it's the league.
To me that's the scary part, because if you hear a UAB player just wants to transfer to the Big Ten when given the opportunity, you don't even blink. You're like, of course. And you hear a South Florida player wants to transfer to the SEC, you're like, well, of course. Well, is Memphis closer to being in that conversation now than it used to be? Because what just happened yesterday had never happened before. And if PJ Haggerty ever comes out and says, here's the truth, I love Penny Hardaway, and man, I enjoyed my time there, and the money was great, and the money I could have made was terrific. But I would rather spend the week playing Baylor and Kansas instead of San Antonio and East Carolina in empty gyms.
Yes.
Like we would all understand that.
Yes.
We understand it when the Summit League Player of the Year does it. We understand it when the A10 Player of the Year, or anybody from that, like outside of the Power 4, Power 5, the Power 4 plus the Big East, when anybody outside of that moves up in conferences, we rarely question it. So maybe we shouldn't be questioning this one nearly as much as we are.
Yep, that's fair. Kansas State fans, we're going to talk about your team right now because this is an interesting, super interesting addition. So K-State's actually been in the headlines here a couple of times here in recent days. Matt Driscoll, who coached at North Florida, so he was Chaz Lanier's coach before Chaz Lanier went and wound up at Tennessee. He had been there for 15, 16 years, best coach in that school's history. He's been longtime friends with Jerome Tang back when they were both assistants at Baylor. He left, and so he's going to be the associate head coach at K-State, and then just a couple of days later, they land Haggerty. Now, keep in mind, K-State a year ago was a top 3, top 4 program in NIL funds in the entire sport, and it didn't pay off whatsoever. They lose those players that they added. Doug McDaniel, Brendan Howson, Coleman Hawkins. What's interesting is a year ago, Coleman Hawkins got, in the neighborhood of 2, a little bit. If you took everything that was tied to Coleman Hawkins' NIL deal, the valuation of that was north of $2 million. Here you get a player like Haggerty. You're going to pay him a little bit more, and you're going to get a better player there. Hawkins was 4th on the team in scoring last season, but he's gone. McDaniel, David Gasson is gone. Achor is gone. Ugonna Onyenso is gone. Kansas State was not remotely an NCAA tournament team last season, 16-17 overall. Tang has missed the past 2 tournaments after making the Elite 8 in year 1. Offensively, they were way down. And here you bring in Haggerty. He averaged 21.7 points last season, in addition to 5.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists. He really did continue at Memphis what he grew into his second season while at Tulsa. Some people may not realize Haggerty is now on his 4th school in 4 years. He was a non-player at TCU. Then he went to Tulsa. He pops in the American, stays, goes to Memphis, does well, and now Tang is going to. While he's got some other pieces here, like he's got guys who were impactful at the mid-major level. How they blend around Haggerty will be interesting to me because to me it looks like on the outside looking in, Tang is going to look to Haggerty to be a guy who potentially leads the nation in scoring. Like that could absolutely be the case. Does it translate to Kansas State being a tournament team, to being a team that can get into that top 25 conversation? I know you don't have them in your offseason rankings. I wouldn't even push back on that. But the transfers coming in are a 20-point per game guy at Monmouth, a 16-point per game guy at Bowling Green, a 12-point per game guy at UNC Wilmington. They've got a transfer, Tyreek Smith, who I think is still going through the waiver process to get cleared. There's a couple of international players. It's a mysterious mix of we don't know what to expect from Kansas State. Like maybe this could be the 4th best team in the conference, or maybe it will wind up being a repeat of what it was the past 2 seasons when it was just not quite good enough and hovering right there just below 500 in league play in the Big 12. But in bringing in Haggerty, you are bringing in an alpha, and he is capable. He is a good rebounding guard. He's not, I don't consider him to be ultra efficient. Like he can get his shots. He's like a 6'3" from an NBA prospect perspective. Like he pulled out of the draft. He's an undersized shooting guard who needs to be able to be a point guard, and he's just not that yet. He can distribute, but he's not that yet. Maybe he can grow into that. He doesn't shoot a ton from beyond the arc. We'll see if his 3-point attempts per game stay level or if they go up. I think he took a three triples per game essentially. But he can hunt his shot well, and he can go on heaters. And yeah, it'll be GP. This will be interesting to see what he is at Kansas State and if he affects winning. Tang needed a big win from a roster standpoint. And my last thing here, and then take it away. This was surprising because I was told that K-State looked into Haggerty a month ago, and then call it early May was told by Haggerty's father, because Haggerty didn't have an agent, and all this is tied into kind of how this has gone here. Like they looked into a few schools and they really didn't get the kind of momentum. They were asking for a lot of money. They were asking for, 4 north of 4 overall. That was not going to happen. And Kansas State got told it was out. back earlier this month. And then for whatever reason, I'm sure we'll learn the story eventually here at some point. K-State got back in, and then quietly and diligently over the past week was able to close, and however they were able to close. And this is a big year upcoming. I don't know if Tang is on the hot seat coming in. I wouldn't say that, but this is, you don't make the tournament a year from now, you would be. And we'll see if by going essentially all in on Haggerty being the alpha guy, can that equate to you being an NCAA tournament level team? I don't know the answer, but I do find this to be a very fascinating landing spot for him, because this was not where people thought it would wind up going.
I don't know if you've ever been house hunting during a market crash, but
Thankfully,
I did that. I did that once. I did that once, and we were very young, my wife and I, and we were driving around neighborhoods, and we saw a house, and we were like, that house is, I mean, I guess it'd be nice to have that, but at this point in our lives, that's probably not in our price range. And then the whole market collapsed, and suddenly this house was in our price range. And I think that's what happened to Kansas State right here.
Okay.
PJ Haggerty came down to their price range. And so, I mean, another coach who was involved in the Haggerty thing a month ago, like I was talking to him about something different, and I was like, hey, just what's going on with the Haggerty thing? Are you in there? He's like, we were, but I don't think we are anymore, but I don't know. We could be. It was one of those, we're just sort of, we'll see. It was like, maybe like we're not in it now, but it might circle back to us, and we'll see. And so I think they entered the transfer portal with some big ideas about how it was going to go, and then it did not go the way that they anticipated, and then the circling back came, and now here we are. As for Kansas State, I think the updated numbers at Torvik put them to 44.
Ooh, do I haven't checked. We have off-season Torvik updates.
Oh, sure.
Oh, look at you. Okay.
Where have you been? What have you been doing?
I'm
all
not messing around with Torvik in May. Not happening. No. I love me some college hoops, but we haven't. All the roster stuff hasn't settled yet. Anyway, they're 44.
Real one's F with Torvik 12.
Yeah, you're only effing with Torvik because you got to update a top 25 and one. Let's be real.
No, I F with Torvik because I'm built this way. I'm wired this way. I am wired to F with Torvik. 12 months a year, 365. 11 a.m., 11 p.m. I could F with Torvik at any point in any day in any month on the calendar.
The wob yet? You know how to sort the wob over there? I guess.
I mean, I think I can figure it out. I think I can figure it out.
Yeah.
I think I can figure it out.
You said you were effing. You were flirting. There's a difference. You said you were effing with Torvik and you're flirting. There's a difference.
If I'm flirting, I'm effing.
Oh, really? Turn that into a t-shirt. More of us.
I don't even think you're allowed to say that. I think that's a ridiculous thing to even say, especially with this Diddy trial going on. I should just shut up for a second.
Yep, I'd say so.
Maybe I should just shut up for a second. 44th at Torvik. IF with Torvik 12 months a year. 9th in the Big 12. That's borderline NCAA tournament stuff. I will say Kansas State was in the Elite Eight 2 years ago. And do you know who got them there?
Jerome Tang.
A little guard who could really score.
Different, though.
Very different. Different types of players, but a little guard who could really score. So if you're a Kansas State fan, if you're Brent Stover and you're trying to figure out what to grab onto, like grab onto that. I will say, does this put pressure on Tang more?
I do think it does in a sense. Like, and he wouldn't run from it, obviously.
Right,
but you bring in a player, you bring in an All-American who was third nationally in scoring, going to be the head of your snake, and another high-profile transfer portal addition. He's different. He's different from Hawkins and all that. But we even had someone mention in the chat, like, there will be some of that. There will be, like, it will be a problem if we get to Thanksgiving. K-State has already taken 2 or 3 losses, and Haggerty is shooting 42% from the field and not being what they thought. That will be a problem if we get to that point. But you take the player thinking that that's not what's going to happen.
That's right. You take the player. You do this, but once you do this, you are setting it up where if it doesn't go well, for the second straight year, people are going to be saying, did them dudes really just overpay for a losing team again?
Yeah.
Like that became a narrative connected to Coleman Hawkins, perhaps unfairly, but buddy, it was attached to him, and his season quite literally ended with him in tears, crying about the experience and how difficult that was, having everybody attach real money to your name and a disappointing season. He was the face of that. He was really the face on some level of the perception of overpaid college basketball players.
Yeah.
He was the face of that last year. And when you swoop in late and you add a Haggerty at this price tag, if it doesn't go well, that becomes a bullet point connected to your program. It's the type of thing people just start tweeting every night you lose.
Mhm.
Like every night you lose, it becomes a tweet about how much you paid for Coleman Hawkins and how much you pay for PJ Haggerty. And to circle back what we're talking about at Texas A&M, it also at least has the chance to make the rich people who are making all of this possible, if it doesn't go well 2 years in a row, spending this type of money on a high-profile transfer, then somebody stands up and says, why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
Where's the return on investment? Where's the bang for the buck? It just sets up some interesting little fascinating, an interesting dynamic that will be, it'll be something to monitor in Manhattan.
Yep. Then the dynamic, we can wrap here. The dynamic to watch for in the Little Apple is that you've got a proven stat monster of a lead guard, and he's going to be surrounded by supplemental pieces that are proven at the mid-major level, and how they blend all that together will be intriguing. And I think Kansas State has a wide spectrum of potential outcomes next season, but that is a good getting, like Tang and his staff being in position to land him and get him. That is a huge upgrade, and at least introduces Kansas State as a tournament team as a real possibility next season, in my opinion. And someone, Jockwell, right here in the chat says, he'll be Haggerty will be a preseason All-American. That's probably fair. I'm not in that space yet where I'm thinking about that stuff, but we do preseason first team, second team, third team All-American. I don't know if I'd go first team, but Haggerty was a second team All-American. I playing next to Hunter, I actually think I really helped him at Memphis, but knowing what he'll be expected to do, I think it would be only fair to at least put him on that second team status going into next season as an All-American, considering what he's achieved the past 2 seasons at 2 different schools.
I think he's got to be on an All-American team. If he's on a preseason top 50 team as a returning second team consensus All-American, he's got to be on there somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily have to be first team, but that can be a conversation for another day. Let's get out of here. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck, Larnell, Torvik, Tang, Cassie. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments. So please do that. We'll talk to you again a little later on this week. Till then, take care.